Give me a few seconds. I'll let you know when we're live.
All right.
And let's just have a good time. Mateo, I am working from home, so if you hear a kid or a door slam, just remember I'm working from home.
No worries.
This is it.
All right.
Okay, Mateo. So, of course, I'm a fan, and I want to introduce one of the most interesting human beings I've ever met, Mr. Matteo Cervantes. Yes, the fly is correct. He's only 22 years old. I'm like more than double his senior. I'm not going to give him my age, Matteo. And he's just got a very fascinating, very interesting, very deep story. And I thought it'd be very important to interview him because that's what I like to do on the show, Matteo. I like to interview like kind of the unseen, the unheard hero. Now, yes, do I believe that you will be a prolific human being one day, a consultant, a public speaker, doing your thing on the global stage? Of course I do. Again, you know, this program is for a lot of those that I want to give them a voice. I want them to be heard. So, Matteo, yes, I'm going to say it. He's only 22 years old. That's why don't be fooled by age. You're making a big misconception when it comes to age, because Matteo, even though he's young at heart, at the same time, he's got a very wild imagination, creative upbringing. You're an only child, am I right, Matteo?
No, I'm not actually.
Oh, wow.
I've got lots of siblings.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, I wish.
But I thought you were
I'm just kidding. Yeah, no. I'm the oldest.
Okay.
I'm the oldest.
Great.
So but I have siblings. I've got sisters, brothers, all my yards.
Jeepers. Okay, Matteo, man. So Matteo, let's pretend I'm a parent, because I'm a parent and I have a son who's 20 years old, Matteo.
Okay.
And my sons are pretty awesome, but if I look at just my son in a sense, I'm trying to understand how you got to where you are today, doing what you're doing, handling your career and your client base, and you just wrote a book, right? You wrote a book?
Yeah. In fact, since we're in quarantine right now, I'm rewriting it completely.
Of course you are.
Yeah.
Of course you're writing your book. Yeah. Of course you are.
Well, because originally I was writing in my spare time, and it could have been done better. So this time I really want to do it right.
Okay, I know you're a perfectionist. I know we like to keep polishing and polishing. I understand that.
Sure.
Again, the most important thing is you actually wrote a book. That's the most. It's finished. Now you're just doing kind of like an edit, a rewrite.
Yeah.
But you wrote a bloody book, Matteo. Do you have the heading? Do you have the title?
Yeah, it's called The Shepherd's Sale, and it's heavily reinforced by this idea that I came up with. Most people, there's really two main ways of selling nowadays. You have the bulldog approach, where it's just back your client into a corner and keep on going after them, right? And then you have the approach that a lot of salespeople take, which is they kind of stutter and stammer on the phone, and if they get the sale, then great, and if not,
I lost you there. Hold on 1 second. I lost audio there, Matteo. Matteo, just look at your settings quickly, please. I see video. So while Matteo, there it is. Okay, Matteo, I see your microphone. Okay, here we go.
All right.
Oh, that's beautiful. Whatever you did, don't change it, because I hear you very clearly now. So Matteo, go back into your book, please.
Yeah, so there's really two main methods that I've seen recently when it comes to sales. Those two methods are the bulldog approach, right, where you're just backing them into a corner. And then you have this kind of sheepish approach where you're kind of going around, you're hoping they might say yes, they might not, you're stuttering, you're stammering, and you're just trying not to make anybody upset. My approach is called the shepherd sale because I think that a good sale is not about convincing somebody. It's about having them be convinced on their own accord. In other words, if somebody else can come to the conclusion that you've already drawn up in your head, it's far more powerful if you can lead them to that conclusion, like a shepherd. Shepherd leads the flock, right? So I want to lead them to the conclusion that I've already come up with, but make them think that it was their idea, have them come up with it on their own accord. And this can be done I was going to say simply. It should sound simple. There's a lot of little tactics that go into it, but it should sound simple. And when you're going into the conversation, it should sound like it's just a normal conversation. It shouldn't sound like you're salesy. You don't want to use leading questions like, "Hey, wouldn't you like to be on a yacht? All expenses paid trip." That stuff is it's outdated. It's sleazy, and this is a way. It's sleazy. It's the car salesman with the hair grease. This is a way of going about it where it's about perspective. You have to understand where the person is at, and you have to understand what thought processes they went through in order to get to the place where they're at. And then once you have them at that place, how do you bring them to now the place where you want them to go? And you do that by thinking in your own mind, what were the processes that I went through to understand this? I'll give you an example. Candle. So I have a candle, right?
Okay.
I throw this candle up in the air. How far did it travel?
3 to 6 inches.
3 to 6 inches?
Yeah.
You're not wrong. But you'd also not be wrong if you said this candle traveled 18 miles. Now, what I mean by that is the Earth is spinning at 1,600 kilometers per hour. So if you were looking at it from outer space, that candle just flew 18 miles, give or take.
I love it, Mateo. I love it. Yeah. I
So
hear what you're saying. Yeah.
So you have to be able to look at it. You have to know who you're dealing with. You have to understand their perspective and understand the processes that it took in order to get them to the conclusion that they've drawn up. And you have to use different structures, different tactics in order to lead them to that conclusion on their own. Does that make any sense?
It does. But what you're also doing to me right now, Mateo, is you're also making me think. So your little lesson there also made me think, wow. And again, Mateo, let's think of a whole other dimension. Really, what you made me think was like so far outside the box that really there can be so many variables. We really aren't typecast into this little world, into this little environment, this little, a little four-corner box.
Right.
I'm really thinking like, wow, just that one little trick there. And I know you have many, many more, really helped me think a lot, which expands and elevates my thought process, my mindset.
Perfect. Yeah. So that essentially, I mean, there's a lot in the book. It's talking about all the little specific methodologies and tactics that you use in order to make that sort of thing happen. But more than anything, it's about almost using your words artistically. Most people just throw words out, and it's about using your words in a way to paint a picture in somebody else's brain, much like an artist would paint a picture on a canvas. And if you're able to do that, not only do you have, it's not even control as much as it is influence over the situation. Because if you can get somebody else to see the picture that's in your own brain by painting it in their brains, I mean, that's huge. You can do anything with that, as far as I'm concerned.
So I want to let the audience to know how I met Mateo was I actually, my CEO, my team leader, Tony Fletcher, told me there was this class being taught at our office there in Yorba Linda, and this youngster was going to come in, this young man was going to come in, and teach us kind of a different philosophy of coaching. Now, Matteo, I've heard it all. I've seen it all. I've watched it all. And you know me, because we spent time together even before and after class discussing approaches and psychology and mannerisms and mirroring and so forth. Tony was right. Literally, when I came to class and I listened to you and I watched you, your approach was very different. It was like you weren't trained the generic mentorship, coaching, leadership way. You kind of had your own flavor. That's what really struck me and put me in awe. Because, and I'm just being transparent with you. That's why we're talking today. I want people to know the person I saw that day on stage, because it was very unique. It was very wonderful. It was very refreshing. That's the word. It was very fresh. Quickly take us back to, you in school, finishing school. I do believe you're a little bit of a, I'm not saying an outcast, but a little bit of an outsider in a sense that maybe you were misunderstood, or maybe within yourself, you're trying to discover yourself. Because at your age, to be where you are today, at your age, that takes a lot of chutzpah, and it does take a different kind of path in life than the average student slash.
Sure. For better or for worse. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely an outcast. But no, so I finished up high school. Right after high school, I thought I wanted to go the college route into psychology. So I started enrolling in classes. I was actually in a rock climbing accident. So I broke my leg, just awful break. Fell off a ledge. There was a little cup hole in the ledge, and my ankle got stuck in there. My leg went one way, my body went the other. And I went to go get up, and there was just a stump for a leg, because my leg had been peeled all the way backward. I mean, it was brutal. But so I had to be hospitalized a while for that, and that made me miss a lot of class. I was getting behind that semester. Around the same time, straight out of high school, I had started getting involved in real estate because I needed a job. And I had worked enough manual labor jobs in my life to know my body's not cut out for that.
Absolutely,
This is no manly man you're talking to. Yeah. So I actually, the way I got into real estate's interesting. I cold called. So every real estate agent. So I did a little bit backwards, because agents are constantly cold calling everybody. I figured I'd give them a piece of their own medicine, and every real estate agent within like a 50-mile radius, I was just calling and calling and calling and calling. And after a while, people started talking. They're like, that little kid call you too? And
wow.
Before you knew it, I was getting tons of no's, just astronomical amounts of no's.
Well, what were you asking, Mateo? If you're cold calling me, because I'm a realtor, I'm a licensed professional. What was your cold call script?
I don't remember. In fact, at that point, I didn't know about scripts or anything like that. What I knew was I was raised predominantly by a lawyer growing up. I had a bit of a weird childhood, because part of my childhood we were very poor, and part of my childhood we were well off. So I got to see both ends of the spectrum. I got to have knives pulled on me, guns, and then I got to see the higher in social status as well. So I think a lot of that was very helpful, because I got to see both sides, and I got to a place where I could, at least, even if I didn't agree, I could understand most people, because I had something to connect with them on. So at that point, I had been raised primarily by a lawyer, like I said, and I was taught from a very young age about framework principles and conversational and argumentative dynamics.
Yeah.
My favorite thing is that I was a bit of a weird kid, because my favorite thing to do was to go and I used to love to go and watch adults speak, particularly my grandpa, who was the lawyer. I used to love to watch them speak and just listen. I wasn't, if all the kids were playing in the backyard, I'd be
Right.
right there listening to all the adults, not saying a word. In fact, it's funny, I talk now for a living, but for a long time growing up, people thought that I maybe couldn't talk because I never talked. I loved to listen. I
Oh,
love
so
to
so so
learn.
you so you I remember I know this. We call them
Yeah.
small mouth and big ears.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting.
So because it was like a story for me. Every time I listened to them speak, I would create these imaginative ideals of whatever it was that they were
Mhm.
talking about. And for me, it was just the same as like a kid's story going to sleep. And I absolutely loved it. And so from a young age, I was taught various forms of argumentative tactics, of tactics for negotiation, and things of that nature. And so a lot of my childhood was structured around that, and more so in parts of my childhood where I didn't have as much control over my own life situation. I thought in my own head, if I could figure out, because there's no way I'm getting out of this by brute force. I mean, I'm a little kid, but if I could figure out how people worked, maybe I could change the situation that I'm in at times. So I became very obsessive with understanding how people worked, even before I was introduced to a psychology book. So that now takes me to the point all the way throughout high school where I started getting interested in psychology a little bit. And then I'm cold calling all of these realtors. By this point, I didn't know about scripts or anything of that nature. I was just taking the tools that I learned from when I was younger
Right.
and applying them to now a real world situation, and they started working.
Wow.
I got a lot of no's for sure, but they started working, and in fact, I I don't recommend this to anybody, but I started going on these interviews and I started getting a big head about myself. I figured, oh, I must be pretty special. I got all these interviews going on. But really, all that had happened was, it's like a game of telephone. Enough people call, and then I call enough people, and then people started talking, and then before I knew it, there was all these things made up that, oh, this kid's the next thing, and all of that, and not at all. It was just a game of telephone that happened to end up that way for me, luckily. But I woke up one morning and I had 50 emails of people asking to interview with me. And I couldn't believe it because I didn't have a real estate license. I didn't have anything. I'm
Yeah.
straight out of high school. I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about. Like I said, I didn't even know scripts were a thing.
Right.
So I remember I went to quite a few interviews. I was really nervous for the very first few, and then before I knew it, I was getting a little big-headed and cocky, like I said, because I was like, all these people want me, you know.
Wow.
Really, it wasn't because they wanted me. I think they just, it's a monetary gain on their end. But
But hear me out for a second, Mateo. If you really think about it, it's actually, real estate agents are trained to be closers. Always be closing ABC. And here you are, you're not even 20, or but you're probably 20 because you're 22 now. Here you are, you're closing them. So I'm sure there's almost like a fascination, like, who is this character? Who's this youngster calling me? Because you've reversed the model on them now. They're so used to picking up their phone, like we call it dialing for dollars, arm curling. Do you know what I mean? They're so used
right.
to them being in that seat. Now all of a sudden the roles are reversed. So I think you almost create opportunity for yourself without even knowing it, by a
Sure.
small little task that they do on a daily basis, which you didn't know they did. I believe you didn't know what cold calling was. You just said it.
Yeah, no. That's definitely terminology I learned later on. I had no idea what a cold call was. I just figured, hey, I can call somebody and maybe I'll get a hold of them. But I got a few interviews, and the one I ended up going with, it was funny because by this point I already had a few and I was getting pretty used to the whole interviewing process. And I won't say names or anything like that, but it was for Berkshire Hathaway, and they were starting a luxury division, and I really wanted to work at that one.
Yes.
But I also knew that I had all these other options. So I was going to leverage that to my advantage a little bit, even though, I mean, keep in mind, this is all stuff that I wouldn't necessarily recommend nowadays. Although leverage can be good. I was definitely not, I hadn't sculpted any form to it yet.
Well,
yeah.
as professionals, we're trained, or especially leadership, we're trained to leverage, to delegate.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, sure.
Mateo, this is why I call you the savant, because at your age, you didn't know the life skills that you'd been taught, or the seeds that had been planted in you as a child, that you were actually practicing them now. So you were leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else. I know you don't.
No, I did.
Yeah.
No, I for sure knew that I was practicing those.
Okay.
That was the one saving grace in all of this, is I knew what I had, and I even, I used to use it all throughout high school. I convinced all my teachers to give me my tests orally. And then when they were going through the ABC and reading out the questions, I then would just read their facial expressions. I've always been good at reading micro expressions and things of that nature. So I would read their micro expressions, and it's the only way I would ace a test ever.
So
by doing that.
So, well, some of us, not myself included, have cheated by looking at our buddies' test sheets, like sharing notes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You watched posture, you watched expressions and nuances in their tonality, how they change, how their body changed, and that's the answer.
Yeah. No, I made it all the way through Spanish 4. I don't know Spanish at all. I still don't know anything in Spanish.
Yeah.
But I made it through just by doing that. And so that was my one thing that I had going for me, and I recognized that, and I figured, well, maybe I could use it in other areas. So now we're in this interview, and he hit me with the hard question. He was like, well, what's your experience in real estate?
Right.
And I was like, nothing. But I wasn't going to let him know that. So I go, luckily none.
Wow.
And he says, what? And I say, luckily none. And I said, think about it. What would you rather have? An experienced agent stuck in their ways that may or may not differ from the way that you conduct yourself? Or would you rather have an agent in which you are sculpting from scratch, sculpting from clay into exactly what you would want representing your team? And I said, this is a new team. You want to make sure you're doing it right. Let's make sure we don't get the wrong personalities on board. I'm sculptable. I'll do whatever you want. I'll do whatever you say, because I don't know any better. And it happened to work out. He said he sat there for 5 minutes after I left, contemplating what the hell just happened. Because you got to understand, I have a baby face still. I looked like a toddler at 18 walking into these places.
Yeah.
And so it was just pure ignorance on my part to some degree, reacting like that, but it happened to work out.
Mateo, I don't know if I don't think ignorance is the right word, because, well, ignorance you can fix, you put it to your last forever. I think I don't believe it was a game for you, but I think it was like a life challenge. You're a conqueror. Sure. You thrive in victory. And the reason I know this is my sister-in-law grew up around attorneys and lawyers. Both her parents were attorneys and lawyers for the IRS and independent practice. And let me tell you what, I wouldn't mess with her parents to save my life, because and so my sister-in-law, I mean, let me tell you what, you get into debate, you're gonna lose. You're just gonna lose. She's just around the dinner table on the weekends. She heard all these different scenarios. Her dad is very successful in Hollywood, Los Angeles. I commend that, because that's pretty powerful. At the same time, when I look at her and I see her behavior, she clearly has some excellence because she inherited that somewhere.
Sure.
More power to her, because she used it she didn't just do nothing with that gift. Okay, now she has a very successful business. And where I'm trying to go with this, Mateo, is like yourself, she was able to use these life lessons in her future, which I don't believe in the present. I believe we're living in the future right now. The present is gone. The past doesn't exist. We don't own the past. So I think for you, it was a challenge, but I think also at the same time, it was discovery. You were on a journey. I believe your mind, and that's what I'm interviewing you, is so elevated. It's so beyond a lot of other people's realm and understanding that as the leaders, we're impressed. And that's why we question you, because we want to understand. We also want to know that secret. You know, Matteo, if I'm much more mature than Matteo, how does this youngster walk into my office and command authority? Do you understand that? Do you know what you're doing yet, or you still, is that in your book?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. First, you said life is like a game, or a challenge rather, and that's exactly how I look at it. If you look at something like a game or like a challenge, your brain actually looks at it differently than if you look at it as a problem. Different neuroreceptors are involved in both of those perspectives. So I think so, definitely. Then you were talking about being raised by a lawyer. No doubt that had some effect. No doubt. There was parts of my childhood where growing up, I could do something. Like I really wanted to do something that most parents would be like, no, you can't do that. They would allow me to think, yeah, I could do that. But here's the but. I had to create an argument that was effective enough in order to persuade a parent to let me do something like that.
Got it.
So
very smart, very smart.
And normally I was unsuccessful at that. But over time you get a lot better at presenting your view. Lastly, there's no secret. What I do isn't anything special. It's nothing more special than anybody else that in one area of life just has something that they're good at and that they put a lot of time and research into. You could almost compare it to, say, like a mechanic. So if you have a 22-year-old mechanic, you don't necessarily go to the mechanic and think, this 22-year-old is absolutely brilliant. He's a savant because he can fix your car. And it's not to even say you can fix your own car. It's just that's not where you've put your time and energy into. And that might not be where you have a natural inkling towards. But that's not to say that I'm any more wise. Trust me, in lots of areas of my life, I am still very much so 22. I make lots of idiotic decisions on a constant basis.
I know. I think we all do, Matteo. I think at the same time, what I'm trying to understand is your mindset is how you exponentially gained a step ahead of even myself. And I remember watching your presentation and listening to your speech. When people spoke, I would watch you pause and be like hyper focused on them. So like that person at that moment was the most special person in your life. And I watched you, Matteo. I watched you because my job is to pay attention to the details, to follow trends. You know what I mean? That's what I've been trained in. But I would watch you, and let me I'll give you some idea. When somebody would be talking in the audience and you'd be kind of moving, you would never actually face them straight on. You'd kind of curve your body at the side and then tilt your head, almost like puppy dog. Puppy dog. You would do that. I'm like, whoa. It was interesting. There was that switch inside of your brain that whatever that person was saying, you listen to every single word or nuance or tonality or posture, and then you responded. But I remember you were quiet. Some of us will speak over other people. A lot of your skills, Matteo, takes adults today don't have your skills, and they're adults. They have jobs, they've got children, they're married, they divorce, whatever they don't have that. It's not maturity, it's knowledge. They don't have that knowledge that you have. Well, I think it's fascinating. I'm glad your parents are remarkable. However, here's a question: have you got your IQ tested? Do you know what your IQ is?
No, I don't. I don't know that it would be particularly high though. I really don't.
Interesting. Mine is super
yeah,
high, by the way. Mine's like off the charts. Elon Musk.
I have no idea where mine is.
Elon Musk is about 160. They say he might be brighter. I'm not too sure, but like Einstein was 160. So I believe like the average, give or take. I mean, I haven't delved into this deep, but I do know mine because my mother got my IQ tested. But Mateo, like the average is like 120, between 90 to 120. You're a good citizen. Then you get the high, like the Steve Jobs, which I don't believe was that high IQ, but Elon Musk and a Einstein, give or take. So that's I'm kind of putting in the category. I believe you're in the category. Mateo.
Well, yeah, I'd have to take it. Truthfully, I've always been nervous to take it. I don't know where I'd fall. I can't imagine it'd be incredibly high, just because I've never been particularly noticeable when it comes to test taking or anything in that realm in general. I've always I have one skill set that I'm hyper good at in a very small area of life. In fact, my friends, one of my closest friends, his favorite thing to say about me is that I am both the smartest and dumbest human he's ever met in his entire life, and I think he's right on.
Yeah, wow.
I think he's right on. Just as much as there are these smart little intricacies in this one little area about me, there's also, I mean, for that, there's a bag of dumb stuff too. I mean, there really is.
No, what about
and I'm not just saying that in a self-deprecating manner. I can be very dumb, but I think that's also important to realize, because I think something else that you mentioned in there was listening, and that actually made me. That's one of the better compliments I think I've received, because that's what I at least try to do. I don't always do it, but I always try to really listen. Because if you can really listen, people tell you so many things, and not just words. I'm hyper focused on them because I'm looking at their facial expressions. I'm looking at their body movements. I'm looking at every little thing that's going on, including the pitches of their tonality, because they're painting a picture of what they're trying to say. And if you know how to look for it, and you know what these little things mean, these little facial expressions, micro expressions, whatever you want to call it, if you know what those things mean, and you know what the person is actually trying to say, because often we don't say what we're actually trying to say.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's true.
I tell this story all the time. I was dealing with a client, and he pulls me aside after, and he says, "Hey, Mateo, I've got this thing going on with my wife." It was basically this thing where he had driven home late from work or something like that. The wife said, "You were supposed to be here on this time." And he said, "Yeah, I'm sorry I was late. And there was traffic on the freeway." And she's like, "No, there was no traffic on the freeway. I checked." And like, they're going back and forth, but are they having the real argument? Because if you get to the bottom of it, which we finally did, the wife didn't care about that, whether or not there was traffic on the freeway. That's a useless argument. We're not saying what we even mean. What she meant, and if he knew how to look for what she meant, he would understand that what she was actually wanting was maybe more time with him. Maybe there was worries or fears of infidelity going on. I mean, you have to look at what the person's actually trying to say, because a lot of times the person themselves doesn't understand what they're actually trying to say, because it's not so easy.
Wow.
So it's a difficult thing, but if you can understand how to look at a person and read all of these little things about it. There's 7 layers of
Tell me about the 7 layers. Tell me about those. Tell me about those.
So you have direct communication. This is quite literally the words that I'm saying to you. Okay, nothing more, nothing less. Just the words that are being spoken. And most people tend to hang out up here. They're looking at the words that were said. Some people go to the second layer, and even that is problematic, because you're still not getting what people are saying. But the second layer is the indirect communication, or the sub-communications of conversation. This is the tonality. This is the body language, the micro expression, the whole 9 yards, all the things that aren't being said directly. For instance, I could say, "Kevin, you're brilliant." Or I could say, "Kevin, you're brilliant," but those don't mean the same thing. Those don't mean the same thing. One is sarcastic. The other is I'm actually giving you a compliment. I'm saying you're brilliant. So you have to look at those two, and then those two combined gives you the third dimension. The third dimension is the underlying, I'm blanking on word terminology right now. The underlying implication of conversation. So the underlying implication is what those two things together imply. From there, you now have so you look at it as a graph, it's going down in 3. Now it breaks off because now we have your counterpart and we have you. So now the next layer is the presuppositions within the conversation. In other words, what's being presupposed by what you or your counterpart is saying, because there's always something that's being presupposed if we're saying anything, right? Because we had to presuppose something, or there had to be a presupposition there, because we're taking that belief from somewhere. We got it from somewhere, right? And then you have the frame. Now, the frame is the interesting thing, because if you can get down to the frame, there's a lot you can do within conversation. So the frame of a conversation is the underlying rules that dictate how people talk, how people react. It's the underlying dynamics of the conversation. It's the belief within the conversation, the deep-rooted belief. And I'll give you an example of this, because it's hard for people to wrap their brains around, but once they do, they take off with it. So it's kind of like with me and you talking right now. You called me and you're interviewing me.
Yeah.
Now, what's something, name anything that would be entirely inappropriate for me or you to do right now, given the context of this situation?
For me to ignore you or go on my phone.
Sure.
Maybe, look off screen to my monitor or something like that.
Sure. So those are the underlying rules that are governing this conversation based off of the social standards of what's appropriate in this context. Now, if you can understand what the rules are in the conversation, you have a lot of power, right? It's hard to play a game like chess when you don't know the rules of the game. If you know the rules of the game, you know how to strategize and you know how to go about the game. So you have to understand the rules, the underlying rules for both your frame and your counterpart's frame that are dictating how you guys are communicating in this conversation. In other words, if somebody is in the Army, for instance, and their drill sergeant maybe swears at them or cusses them out or says something like that, right? Gets in their face and yells at them. What are they going to do? Probably nothing. They're going to say, yes, drill sergeant, or whatever they do, right?
Right.
If that same person is on the side of the sidewalk, right? They're walking to a store and somebody does the exact same thing, that's probably going to get confrontational. There's going to be a lot different of a reaction. Why is that? Well, because there's certain rules in both situations that are governing how somebody should react, right? So in the second scenario, you end up with a fight. In the first scenario, the guy just stands there and takes it because he realizes that the underlying rules that govern this interaction are such that this is the norm. This is what's supposed to happen. Now, just the same, if you can change those rules in certain situations, now we're talking. Now you have a ton of power and control within the conversation and where that conversation goes.
Yeah, mastery, absolutely.
Sure. And this is something that I'd like to think I'm beginning to understand, but it's deep. There's lots of layers to it. But let's say, for example, something that'll help real estate agents out or any business person. Really, I mean, this helps anybody in general. Let's say that you sit down with a client. Okay, when an agent or anybody is sitting down with their client, and we're talking a sales situation here. When they're sitting down with their client, there is a pursuer and a distancer in that relationship. Because in all relationships, there will always be a pursuer and there will always be a distancer. There will always be one person that's more likely to pursue and one person that's more likely to distance.
I've never heard this
conversations.
Before. Yeah, I've never heard this before.
In all conversations. Think with your wife, with your kids, with everything. There's one person more willing to walk away than the other, right? Why is that? Well, that struck home for you.
Yeah, no, I love it.
It strikes home for me too.
Yeah,
I'm thinking,
absolutely.
I got a lot of distancers.
Yeah.
No, when there's one person that's more likely to leave that conversation. And there's one person that's more likely to pursue. And the differentiator is that the pursuer sees the distancer as having more value within the realm or the context of that environment, right?
Okay.
So they see that person as having more value. The distancer sees them as having less.
Okay. Yeah.
Typically, you go up to a girl in the bar, who's the distancer and who's the pursuer?
Oh, okay.
Right?
Good.
Yeah.
I like that. Good analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, she's like, oh yeah, she's a distancer for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
99% of the time, because she sees you as less valuable.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're going into a conversation with a client, most people assume the role of pursuer, right? Because that's the frame. That's normal. Those are the social norms. If I'm a salesman, I pursue you, right? Until you eventually say yes. And of course, to some degree, that's true. You have to pursue. I mean, God, if you're cold calling, you called them, right? To some degree,
exactly.
you're the one pursuing them.
I want your business. Yeah.
But a good sale is not pursuing them until they say yes. A good sale is about starting off as the pursuer and ending up as the distancer.
Yes,
that's what a good sale is. If you can change the underlying framework. In other words, you start off by pursuing because to some degree you have to get in front of them, right? But now you start doing certain things to become the distancer. For example, just even before a client works with me, they go through a questionnaire. And then after the questionnaire, they have to go through an application process. After the application process, now they get on the phone with me and they have an interview with me to be my client, right? In other words, who's pursuing who here? I might have pursued them to get them to make that happen, right? Just like I might be pursuing some client out there that's listening to this right now to make that happen. But once they get in the door, they're pursuing me actively. And every step that they take is more emotional investment or more time investment that they've invested into me. So by the time I get on the phone with them, they're already fighting for my business. I'm not fighting for their business. I'm saying things like, listen, why should I work with you?
Right.
You only closed this much last year. What's going to change this year? Why should I expect a change? I'm asking questions of like that. And what they're doing is they're pursuing. And you can always tell who's the pursuer and the distancer in a conversation by who is self-qualifying. So self-qualification is anytime I'm explaining to you something about me that is trying to either gain validation from the person or not lose validation from that person. Does that make sense?
Yes, it
so
does. Very clear on that. Yeah, I understand that very well.
Which is what most salesmen are taught is the whole sale, right? They're taught, I go in there and I just self-qualify. Here's why I'm the best. Here's how many I close. I can do this. I can do that. You're a dancing monkey. You can do backflips, right? For them. And the problem with that is you don't gain the client's respect, and it creates numerous other issues. Like that's when you get people that have buying when they purchase and they regret it later, buyer's remorse, right?
Yep, absolutely.
You get situations like that because when they made the decision, they weren't comfortable making that decision. You were just pursuing them until they said yes, and sometimes it's just to get you off of their back. Right. So you have to understand things like that. And once you start to unravel those sorts of things, you understand it's almost like a map when I'm talking to somebody is how I see it in my brain. It's like, okay, we're here. We need to get here.
Yes.
These are all the little variables that are being taken into account. These are all the emotions that they've shown me. These are all the logistics. Now, how do we shape that so that just like a shepherd, we can lead them to where we want them to go?
Right. So almost, Matteo, at the end of the day, we're almost like the sheeple. And I mean that in a sincere way. You're the shepherd and we're the sheeple. Leaders are shepherds. That's really what they are.
Sure.
And going back to your book, because you've got a lot to share. Maybe we can do another interview at another time.
Yeah.
Matteo.
Let's do it.
When will your book be available?
The book will be available probably next month around this time. Yeah.
No, forgive me. Go ahead.
Yeah. So probably around next month at this time. I can let you know an exact date earlier. I do have a pamphlet book. In other words, I call it my pamphlet book because it's the very first book that I made, and that's available now.
Excellent. So
we're just sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just excited. I'll get a little bit of alone time here.
No worries.
If I want to get a hold of you, guys, this is how it's going to work. Do me a favor, please. You know, my mission and my journey is to get these unspoken, unseen heroes on camera, record them for life. Here's Matteo Cervantes. Subscribe to this channel and do me a favor, crush the like button and hit the bell if you want to have updates and notifications about when we're having more episodes. I'm going to put all of Matteo's details, his contact information, his social media links in the description box below. If you want that pamphlet from Matteo, get it. What I do want to do, Matteo, is maybe in a month's time or when your book is released, let's have another broadcast and let's go deep into your book.
100%. Let's do it.
Is there, I mean, don't give it all away, but is there anything else special, like the candle trick, that you can share with us that might be in the book or something that isn't in the book that you kind of would love to share or entertain us, Matteo?
Another candle trick.
You're the magician. You've got this beautiful mind.
Well, thank you. No, I mean, though, all of it's that, you know, it might not be as fun to watch as a little candle throwing up in there and catching, but all of it is, I don't even want to call them tricks. They're just ways of behaving that will get your counterpart, whoever that is in this situation, whether it's your wife, your daughter, son, husband, it doesn't matter, a client,
or even our own ego,
in a favorable way. What was that?
Or even our own ego, because there's two people here. There's two people here. You know, there's so Matteo, I've got to end it there. This has been a spectacular process. There's so much more than honestly, Matteo.
Thank you.
We've just touched the tip of the iceberg. I know your book's going to be special, and I really think I'd love to be a part of that platform to get your message into the world. And let me tell you what, I'm getting people from Brazil, lost in South Africa, because that's where I'm from, from Britain, Portugal, watching these videos. It's just amazing. And to let you know, Matteo, you're the first interview I've taken live on YouTube.
Oh, awesome.
So you're actually, while we're doing this Zoom call, you're actually live on YouTube as well as at the same time, as I explore this platform to take these messages global.
Awesome.
Matteo, thank you. Thank
you for having me.
Quickly, just give us, how can we reach you, Matteo, your email address?
Sure. So my email address is mateo.leon.cervantes. So Leon, Mateo, Mateo, Leon, Lyon, .cervantes, CERVANTES @gmail.com. That's my personal below. Okay. Yeah, that's my personal email. You can get in touch with me through there. You can get me on social media, _Teo experience or _Teo experience. Yeah. Excellent. And thank you for having me on. For all of your global viewers, I do video calls as well, so I'm not leaving you guys out. But you're a great person, Kevin, and I truly mean that. I've gotten to know you over the course of probably a year now, maybe. And
the first interaction was the best one because you have a beautiful mind, Matteo. We just connected.
Thank you. Well, you're a genuinely great guy, and I was really happy when you asked me to do this podcast, especially with everything going on right now. It was a great distraction, and I enjoyed myself thoroughly. So thank you, Kevin.
My friend, you'll be able to see yourself live in 30 minutes on YouTube. Matteo Cervantes, I call him the Savant. He's got a beautiful mind. His book's coming out. I'm going to endorse him as long as I know him because he's just awesome. Me and Matteo also work in other endeavors into the near future that we wanted to work on, except when the quarantine came and COVID-19 and all this kind of stuff. It didn't stall us. It just made us have to reevaluate and become more of a hybrid human being,
right?
Dependent and reliant on our brick and mortar or our offices, and really become more self-sustainable. So I think this is a very important time to explore the avenues of sustainability, but also progress. I think we've
Right.
been so stagnant. Our systems are so archaic, Matteo. I'm not talking about being a disruptor. I'm talking about being more of I call it hybridization. We've got to become more hybrid in our approach to us as existing human beings. I'm talking you and me. We can all come together. My friend, thank you. It's been awesome.
Thank
We'll
you.
speak soon.
Yeah. All right. Bye, Kev.
Cheers, Matteo.